Hey Artnerds, can you believe that we are on our third Kuretake Gansai Tambi Granulating Colors set? Yeah, I'm a little surprised by that as well. So I have reviewed the other two and I will be pulling them out for today. But if you've watched my channel for a while, if you're familiar with my granulating colors or my Gansai reviews, then you have a good idea of what you're in for today. But if not, hi, hello, welcome. I'm Becca Hillburn. I'm a watercolor comic artist and illustrator, and I love watercolor, especially granulating watercolor for fun atmospheric backgrounds. And I have talked about a lot of granulating watercolor here on the channel, including Kuretake's prior to sets. So what we are going to do today is we are going to swatch this newest addition to the cadre of granulating watercolors. We are going to do some forced granulation tests as well. And we are going to at least paint some watercolor cookies featuring my character, Kara, because that is a mainstay of my granulating watercolor tests to see how well these work for atmospheric watercolor backgrounds. And then, of course, if inspiration happens to strike along the way, I may add in some additional tests. I also plan on re-swatching the first two Kuretake granulating sets just for your comparison in case you're curious if one set would be better than the other. So this is a 5-color set with the final pan being empty. I don't really know why Kuretake does that, but they do. I paid this much for it on Amazon, and it was purchased out of pocket with funds raised from my Patreon as well as from my in-person teaching engagements. The colors in this set are 781 Lunar Pink, 782 Lunar Orange, 783 Lunar Green, 784 Lunar Lime, 785 Lunar Blue. And these are intended to separate, and it can be more or less depending on the paper that you use. So we are going to play around with a few different papers today. This is what they look like. I only have 5 colors to swatch in this set, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it live. I also decided I wanted to work with a larger brush. That way we can get a little more paint on the paper. And we're going to start with Lunar Pink. We'll do a mass tone. And then we will do a gradiated water swatch. Next is Lunar Orange. Now, one of the nice things about Gansai style watercolor is they have these larger pans. So if you like to work larger, you can get that nice big brush in there. Then Lunar Green. Now, normally I find that Gansai don't really require a lot of pre-activation, but sometimes if they've been sitting for a while, you do need to pre-activate them first just to help them wake up. Next is Lunar Lime. Which this seems more like a green, and the one next to it seems more like a lime. And we can already see, I don't know if you guys can see it, but a little bit of granulation happening there. And then finally, Lunar Blue. So far, these are looking kind of pale, but we're going to keep working with them. So next, I want to do forced granulation swatches. And what that is I'm going to put down a field of water and then dab in the paint to really force it to granulate out. Forced granulation is where the granulation becomes the most apparent for all the colors, but it's still rather mild for Lunar Pink. Lunar orange is very striking. It almost looks like fire. Lunar green is a lovely split between aqua and a warmer yellow, resulting in an olive mass tone. Lunar lime is a phthalo blue and a cool yellow, which has a refreshing grass green appearance. Lunar blue is a beautiful mix between purple and maybe phthalo or ultramarine blue. Granulation splits become particularly apparent as the colors dry. These are mostly dry, but they're not finished drying. It would take forever tonight because it's really humid outside. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. These are from Kuretake's other two granulating sets. They may have gotten mixed up a little. I believe this is from set 1 and then this is from set 2. I probably should make a swatch card to help delineate them. My goal today, obviously, is to add this newer set in. So this is a Studio of MM stack. She created these organizers for Gansai style pans and they're just really helpful. It's so much easier than having a bunch of palettes laying around. So I wanted to comparison swatch the other two sets for you guys. I feel like as time has progressed, Kuretake has kind of figured out what they're doing with their granulating colors. I'm going to try to force some granulation too for you guys to see, because the thing about these granulating colors is often in mass tone, they're just not really that impressive, especially with their first set. Their first set in the mass tone, everything was kind of the same sort of gray, as you guys are kind of starting to see. And it isn't until they granulate out that we start to see how pretty and interesting some of the effects are. I also don't know why, but today I'm having trouble actually getting the colors to activate so that we can actually see what we're dealing with. Now, this review isn't supposed to like convince you to buy these. It's really just to help you see if this is something that would be useful to you and if it's a product you would actually like. These are actually fairly expensive for Kuretake, and you don't really get, like, you get 5 colors instead of 6, which is pretty non-typical for Kuretake Gansai sets. Also, some of you guys will probably feel like this is kind of too niche for you. And honestly, if you feel like it's too niche for you, it probably is. Again, I'm really just trying to help you guys see if these will be a good fit for you, because this is something that I would be interested in anyway. And if this isn't really enough to tell you whether or not you would like these, don't worry. I do have some existing tests that I did earlier that I can pull out to show you guys. And you would think from the amount of work that I do for these kind of reviews that I would be some company's rep, but I'm not. I'm totally a free agent, independent art supply reviewer. Always try to disclose when a product is sent to me versus when I pay for it to help you guys make informed decisions. I am going to go ahead and clean my water cup out, and then I'll do some forced granulation swatches so that hopefully you can see how these colors granulate better. Here are some forced granulation splits for both Kuretake Set 1 and Kuretake Set 2, so you guys can really see how these colors granulate out. These haven't fully dried, but again, it is so wet outside tonight. It's going to take a while, and I want to go ahead and set this aside and move on. But even though they're not dry, I think you can see how much these granulate. And I'm about to show you a sketchbook where I've done tests for some of these where we can really see how much they granulate. So this is cellulose paper, which I find that sometimes these actually granulate better on. This was from the first of the Kuretake set. I think it's like Lunar Violet, something like that. But it's in their Granulating Set 1, and I only did one of the colors. It was the purple, because we get these really striking shifts. Now, with the second set, I felt like we had several colors that had some really pretty granulation. So I wanted to play around with and test out a few of their colors. So I'm hoping tonight to do the same thing, where I'm going to do some floral field tests with these and see how, just see how they handle on a cellulose paper. But before that, I felt like these really inspired me to think of like a sunset. So I wanted to try out a new watercolor bookmark. So this is SMLT Art. This is their cotton rag bookmarks. And I was just going to keep it super simple, lines of color bleeding into each other, wet into wet, in a sunset gradient. I feel like as time has progressed, Kuretake has figured out how they want to handle granulating colors, because I think each set is an improvement on the last, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with future sets. I would love to see some granulating sets that include metallics as well. I think that would be so pretty. So we started out with the blue-green, then the lime green, yellow, orange, red, and blue. And I'm adding in drips of water to encourage cauliflowering so that we can get some interesting effects and varied granulation. I let the first layer dry, and then I decided to do a second layer. It didn't go quite the way that I envisioned because there's some runs and the paper doesn't have as much texture as I thought. But I decided to kind of fix that. And you guys will see in a minute, like it looks fine here. And then I add in extra water to encourage cauliflowering and splitting, and that's where we get some less than pretty runs. If I were going to recommend you do this at home though, I would say maybe less adding water and just kind of leave the colors as they are. So I tried to salvage it, or I feel like I actually did salvage it, by adding in some white clouds in white gouache, and I think the bookmark turned out pretty cute, and it's fairly simple to replicate. Now I want to move on to doing some flower tests. I apologize that it's kind of hard to see the sketching phase. I'm drawing it in red lead and I'm drawing it very lightly. I'm starting with some mimosas and I'm going to use lunar pink for this. The lunar pink seems to granulate readily if you tap it into water. The colors are a hot pink and maybe a mauve or a purple. It's a pretty but subtle split for color, but it works very well for mimosa. And I apologize, my head is going to be in the shot for a lot of these. I had it pulled back so you could see the whole thing, but my eyesight is terrible. I'm using a little bit of masking fluid to kind of mask off some of the... So if you've ever looked at mimosa flowers, they have like these stems and then these little tufts, and I was just masking out some of the stems. And for these, I'm really trying to keep it very loose, kind of atmospheric, and really relying on the granulation to do most of the work. Paint the foliage, I'm pulling out a contrasting color of green, something that will suit the mimosa. So we have such warm, bright, hot colors. I pulled a cooler green to kind of offset those pinks and to make them stand out. And then I'm going to kind of lightly and roughly ink it using a Pentel pigment brush pen. This is in extra fine. And I'm hoping to get some dry brushing techniques with this too. I feel like that roughness kind of adds, just like, I don't know, it just really makes the flowers themselves stand out a little bit. Now we're moving on to the yellow orange, and I thought daylilies would really suit the subject matter. This color granulates out so pretty. It's like a yellow and a pink. There's a lot of really pretty shading to this color, and it worked really well for daylilies. You can see I'm really trying to encourage runs, and I'm trying to encourage the colors to split so that we can really see all of the beautiful color and all of like the lovely chaos that this color has to offer. And then going in with a kind of a tighter version of the same color. These are mainly monochromatic paintings just to kind of refine the details in the daylilies, but it's a really beautiful color. It works well as a color split, but it also works very nicely in mass tone. I'm using a Sakura Pigma FB brush pen. This is a finer brush pen to ink the flowers themselves, and that way we can maintain the delicate nature of the flowers so that they are a little lighter, a little airier, not area, airier. Oh my gosh, what a hard word to say now. Than the foliage, which I'm mostly still inking with the Pentel pigment brush pen. For the green, which I think is really more of like a yellow green, I would have called this one lime. I am doing Buttercups. Buttercups are in the ranunculus family, and they come in a variety of colors, but I'm specifically thinking about those little bright yellow ones because they could almost be seen as like a yellow green and would kind of work with the color at hand. When these hit water, they separate out into yellow and teal blue, making for some lovely granulation. The more water, the more split. It's challenging to build up more saturation with this color, and to me, this one should have been named lime, like I said, not blue green. But I think it's a really interesting color, and I'm glad that Kuretake is starting to take more risks and do more of like a gamut spread in terms of the colors. There's more color range in the colors in these sets because, compared to Kuretake Granulating Set 1, there were so many colors that were very similar in that set, and now we're seeing a lot more difference, and that kind of makes for a more usable set instead of getting colors that feel repetitive. For Lunar Lime, I'm doing a Calla Lily, and I'm kind of going with an undersea kind of feel with this color. And Lunar Lime granulates neon green and neon blue. It's a really fun color split for this one. And this is one that I want to keep really loose and kind of light because I'm really painting like a white Calla Lily, and I want that to still be kind of reflected in what you're seeing here. Finally, for violet, I'm actually going with a native flower. I'm doing blue Mistflower. I thought this color would be perfect. It is almost the exact same color that blue Mistflower is in real life. Blue Mistflower is this beautiful, like ultra blue violet, very similar to some Louisiana irises. It's one of my favorite colors, but it's really hard to photograph. Cameras don't like it. It's kind of like those like really saturated pinks where cameras are like, I'm gonna make this red. It's just hard to photograph. This one I kept super light and simple because these are just like a really lightweight, airy little puff ball kind of flower. I think they're in the aster family. All right, so here are our finished floral studies done using Kuretake Granulating Set 3. I really enjoyed this set. I like the color choices. I love the color splits. And I feel like each color in this set is distinctive and able to hold its own. So now we're moving on to the comic test with these little punched out watercolor rounds. These were punched out from Blick Cotton Rag watercolor paper. They have been pre-sketched and pre-inked, and I'm taping them down to chipboard just to provide a little bit of structural support, and then I'm using a watercolor weight just to hold them in place. And as I mentioned before, this is something that I do with all of the granulating ones, as I do like a little comic panel test to kind of show how these might work for atmospheric and simple backgrounds. So I wanted to do summertime activities. So we have stargazing, bug catching, running through the tall grass, eating watermelon, and one of them is supposed to represent bonfire, that one here. But I decided to lean more into the roast marshmallow aspect of it because I figure if you see roast marshmallows, then you know somebody is doing a bonfire. So stargazing is the blue, marshmallow is the orange, bright yellow green I think is what I went for with watermelon, the cooler green is what I went with for grass, and the red is what I went with for the little bug catching ladybug that you see here. We talked earlier about how all of these colors granulate out, and the subject for each cookie was drawn to reflect that, giving you an idea of how a simple background effect can have a lot of impact. If you want to force more granulation, you can dab more water in while the paint is still wet to force separation and cauliflowering. This is my third Kuretake Granulating Set review, and I reviewed a lot of granulating watercolors. I'm still not entirely secure that these are light fast. I went digging and I found some older swatches that didn't hold up so well. So I really want you guys to be kind of careful with these. It's a your mileage may vary sort of situation. So for comics are generally done for reproduction. We scan them. So it doesn't necessarily matter as much for the final printed comic product if the colors shift. But if you want something that's archival quality, I'm still not entirely convinced that these are going to serve for that. Now that I have the backgrounds painted, I can remove the masking fluid from the stargazing one, and then I can focus on batch painting the rest of these. If you guys are curious about how I go about painting watercolor comics, I've got a couple of playlists where I walk you through my entire comic making process. Make sure you check the cards for that. I would also really love it if you took a minute after you watched this video to go and check out my watercolor webcomic, 7-inch Calla. You can read it for free at 7inchcalla.com. It's a charming story about a 7-inch tall little girl who sets out on a big adventure and discovers a massive family secret. Along the way, she makes friends with giants, and there's even a little kitten riding. You can read it at 7inchcalla.com. So while painting these cookies, I had no issues with the background colors. There was no bleeding, there was no reactivation, there was no smearing. It didn't affect the colors that I'm painting on the foreground characters. I'm using my Daily Driver watercolor set. So this is the watercolors that I use all the time. I use them for my comics. It's a hodgepodge of different brands that I'd happen to really like that I've tested out over the years. And if I really love it, it ends up in this massive mega palette because why choose? So I had no issues with the Kuretake and these other watercolors. There were no compatibility issues, nothing like that. So I think these would work really well for comic backgrounds or for adding a little atmospheric pizzazz. But again, I'm not sure if they're entirely light fast. So that's going to be something that you might want to be cautious with, or you might want to try and do your own testing. I'm just not set up. I don't make the kind of money I would need to make from YouTube to facilitate me doing light fast testing. So unfortunately, that's not something that I currently offer, but it's a fairly simple thing to do. If you just want to test 1 or 2 sets, you can just tape them up in a window that gets a whole lot of light. What you would do is cover half of each swatch with some really heavy like cardstock paper to block the sunlight, and you would just leave it up for, let's say, a month in direct sunlight to see how the sun affects it. Now, the swatch that I had that degraded over time was actually in a drawer in my climate-controlled house and hadn't seen the sun at all. And I do live in Cancer Alley, which we do have air quality issues, so that may have affected the paints. But we also have an in-house air conditioner and multiple air filters to try and clean our air. So I don't know. And I mean, there's very few places you can live in the US where you might not be dealing with air quality issues. So I just thought it was something worth letting you guys know about, for you to be aware of. It took me by surprise when I saw how much the colors in my Kuretake Granulating Set 1 had shifted, but they don't shift on the cookies, as you guys will see in a minute. So again, it's not a consistent result. It's just something that I wanted to warn you guys about. This set was purchased out of pocket by me with funds raised from my Patreon as well as from my teaching engagements. If you enjoy what I do and you'd like to support me continuing to do these kind of watercolor reviews, I would really love it if you can afford to do so. If you would join me at patreon.com/natosoup, you'll get early access to videos like this one, and you'll also get free printables and access to the materials that I make for my in-person classes. So hopefully I'll see you guys over at patreon.com/natosoup. It's worth checking out even if you're on a budget right now, because I try to release fairly regular art blog posts and I set those free to the public. So if you enjoy art blogs, if you enjoy seeing works in progress, or if you just like my art, you can find that at patreon.com/natosoup. As you guys can imagine, doing all of these field tests, we did 3 separate standalone field tests. We did the bookmark, we did individual flowers to really explore each color, and then we also did these cookies. Is a whole lot of work. These videos take a while to record, but I hope I was able to cover all the bases, answer all of your questions, and leave no stone really unturned. As always, if you have a different experience with any product that I have talked about, feel free to let me know down in the comments. Just remember to be kind. We are all people here doing our best. While those scan, I pulled out some of my other granulating tests from over the past few years, because I have been reviewing super granulating watercolors for a while. And I will try to remember to link the whole playlist for you guys in the description below. But this has been a project that I've been working on for a while. And I know that there's a few that I've missed, or a few I haven't gotten around to yet. Like I'm looking over at my White Nights watercolors that I'm like halfway finished with the review for. I don't know why I stalled out on that. ADHD, I guess. But makes kind of a satisfying little collection of watercolor comic panels. or, you know, meant to represent watercolor comic panels. Speaking of, though, if you would like to check out my watercolor comic, you can find it at 7inchcara.com. It is available both as a web comic as well as physical books. All right, y'all, let's talk about the pros and cons of Kuretake Granulating Set 3. Basically, they're going to be pretty similar to my pros and cons from Granulating Set 2. I like the color selection. I like the color splits. I think they're very pretty. I think they can be a fun way to add some additional color to your work. I think they work really well for like monochromatic paintings that have a little extra pizzazz. I still don't understand why Kuretake only gives us 5 instead of a full 6. Especially considering these granulating colors cost more than their regular Gansai Tambi line. You are not necessarily missing out. They are not doing anything that is just super unique and different from every other brand. So if you already have some granulating watercolors, these are not necessarily, well, now that I'm looking at it, I remember not being so impressed with the Aurora set because some of the colors are just really, really similar, but they are very pretty. And it does seem like they're kind of, in general, going along with a theme. So, in general, I don't necessarily think you're missing out. I do think this is kind of an expensive format for what you get, for the amount you get, and for how quickly these get used up. You may find, and I still need to review the Hillburn granulating set. Told myself I have to wrap up some of the other ones that I've got kind of in process before I can buy the Hillburn set, because it's really pretty and I can't decide which ones I want. So I'm going to end up buying a bunch of them, and that's going to end up really expensive, and it's going to end up taking up a bunch of time. So, you know, it's pretty. I enjoyed it. I like super granulating watercolors. I am also a comic artist, but as you guys saw, I demonstrated how these could be really fun for florals. So it's kind of a your mileage may vary situation. If you have the funds to do so, and after watching this video, you just know you have to have them, I'm not going to talk you out of them because you're going to enjoy them. However, if you're kind of on the fence, or you think they're kind of pricey, or you can't justify the cost, a couple suggestions. One, split the set with somebody. I have seen people pry their paints out of the pans because they're like glued in there, and maybe not even that well glued in there, but I've seen people pry them out and then cut them in half for travel palettes. So you could split it even 3 ways, and that way it would just be a $10 investment approximately per person. That would make it a lot more affordable, especially if you just want a little taste or you're only going to use it irregularly. Or you can just kind of wait and see if the price goes down. Now, another downside to these is while these have held up very well, I have had swatches from the first granulating set change color in a negative way and degrade over time. So I think it's gonna really gonna matter what paper you're using, how you store it. I think that's gonna become really important with these. And that's actually something I've noticed with some other glycerin-based watercolors. Not saying that these are glycerin-based, it's just a trait I have noticed in glycerin-based watercolors, that they do have a tendency to color shift and color degrade. And it's also a trait I've noticed in dye-based watercolors. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. It does say water-based pigment, but I see people use pigment to mean all kinds of things and not necessarily to refer to mineral pigments. So I know it's kind of a non-conclusive answer, but that's also why we tested these out so much. I think these are fun. I think they're a good alternative to some of the other super granulating colors that have been on the market, like the, I believe it's Supervision super granulating paints I reviewed a long time ago. A lot of people have had problems with those paints. I think this is going to be a better solution to that. That isn't going to corrode in the tube. But you're not going to die if you don't have it. It is not necessarily a game changer. It is not necessarily a must-have. And you can mix your own super granulating colors at home, by mixing colors with 2 different gravities. So you can mix a granulating color with a staining color and then just add a bunch of water, and that should granulate out. And in fact, if you guys are interested in seeing me play around with that and demonstrating that, let me know down in the comments below. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. It really means a lot to me when you take the time out of your day to put me on and hang out, whether it's in the background while you're doing dishes, whether you're taking a nap, looking for something to relax to, or working on your own art projects. I'm always glad when you choose to put my videos on. It really means a lot to me, and I really appreciate it. I hope that this was helpful, useful, and inspiring for you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to hit like. It tells YouTube to show this video to more people who might enjoy it. And if you'd like to hang out with me again, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell notification so we don't miss each other. I know you may think that you are already subscribed. Believe me, I have made that mistake with a lot of creators that I really like because they keep getting recommended to me and I'm like, oh, I must be subscribed. And then they disappear and I'm like, oh, I wonder where they went. And then it turns out I was never subscribed after all. But YouTube tells me that 80% of you guys come here via the search function. So if you like my vibe, if you like what I do, it'd really mean a lot to me if we made it official and you hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to hit 100K subscribers. Probably not going to happen by the end of the year, but it sure would be nice. So if you enjoyed this video and you think you know other people who would benefit from it, please, 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 please feel free to give me a shout out on Blue Sky or Threads, or share it on your favorite subreddit. As always, it is my hope that my videos and my reviews will make art a little bit more accessible for you guys, will demystify the materials and parts of the process, and will allow you to make art a part of your everyday life. I would really love it if I could be a bit of an inspiration for helping you make art a habit. I hope that you guys have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye, guys.